So a couple of quick things before we continue on. First of all, we are all done with expectations of being positive. Yay! The time to go home is approaching sooner. So we're going to talk about responding to negative behaviors, helpful tools, again, more stuff to help decrease those negative behaviors. And then whatever time, CPI I could talk about. I mean, literally, we do our CPI trainings for 9 hours, so I could talk 9 hours about it. But I'll just share as much or as little as we have time for. Cool? Two things. One is Phil brought up a fantastic point and didn't interrupt me when he should have. So interrupt me next time, man. My expectations are not that you have to be quiet the whole time. Okay? Just be cool. Courteous. But if anything, you guys are welcome to jump in anytime. Phil brought up a great point. When we're thinking about expectations, here's a great question to ask, whether it's at Kids Hope, In Faith Kids, at Reflectors, or wherever you are, at home or in any environment. What does success look like? Like, what does it look like for me to say this hour was really great, or so-and-so really, had a great time, and really knew that they were loved and valued. What does that look like? So I just encourage you to ask that question. Because while we set the behavior bar at a particular place, again, at the end of the day, it might look different for one person than another, right? I can tell you right now, what a successful day looks like for each kid in Reflectors on a Sunday morning is different for each one, really. And so one of the things that we pray about, because I have to show, one of the things we pray often is like, Lord, just help me find the keys. That's one of our prayers in this ministry, is like, help me find the keys to understand this kid. Show me something. And then for some kiddos, God, he really jokes a bit, and he actually gives us keys. We have a kiddo, his name is Gabe. And you know what we found out his reinforcer was? Keys. And I thought, Lord, that is too good. That is too good. But then he also surprises us. John, who works with Gabe often, just kind of had this epiphany. Last week he was walking with Gabe past. Gabe has autism, he's nonverbal, and he has a strong will. And they were walking by the bookstore, and there was something with an angel, like a book or something, a picture with an angel in the front of it. And Gabe stopped, and he just lit up. And then John just kind of figured out that Gabe loves angels. And then had the sweetest connect with Gabe, talking about, there's an angel in the Bible named Gabriel. And it's just like, man, so God will give those keys, but just keep praying for it, for each individual, but also keep learning and keep asking. Anyway, anything you want to say on that, Phil?
No, you nailed it. That's great.
All right. So here's the transition. Behavior is communication. Make sure you highlight that, okay? So Greg, I'll use you as an example. What am I communicating right now?
It looks like you're ticked off at me.
Absolutely. Did I say a word to you?
No.
No. But my behavior, my posture, or I could say, Craig! Right? Even just my tone of voice. And this is all part of CPI too, but that communicates something, right? And so understanding that it's the same with kids. When a kiddo is acting out, they are communicating something. They're not just, maybe they're communicating, I hate your guts, get away from me, I don't want to be with you right now. That's possible. But a lot of times, it's again, getting those keys. What are they communicating right now? So I talked about it a little bit, but there is a common message with a lot of kids, okay? And the common message and what they're communicating, whether you realize it or not, is either I want control or I want attention. I want control or I want attention. Now, here's why negative response is so bad and so unhealthy. Say, and again, this is behavior 101. You guys probably know this, but say a kiddo, my son does this all the time. He will start throwing his cars. Okay? Why does he do that? Because he wants attention. How did he learn that throwing cars would get attention? Oh, probably because I responded. I gave him attention when he threw the cars. Okay, we enforce the behaviors we respond to when the root of the behavior is attention seeking. Okay?
But the thing is, if he's throwing the cars, this is something you may have to react to because if it's like a matchbox car, he wings it.
Right.
Say hits somebody or breaks something, then something.
So we're gonna talk about that fine line because that is you're right. How do you respond? But I promise you this: he knows. He wants attention, that's why he's doing it. And if I continue to respond, no, stop it, every time, I am reinforcing the behavior, okay? So we have to start fresh with helping him change that behavior. But if I keep saying, no, don't do that, it's going to be the same thing over and over and over again. Does that make sense? Okay. Which is why positive reinforcement is so important. Because that is a need. If the attention is a need, let's meet the need. Let's not meet it in a negative way, because that's super unhealthy. Let's meet it in a positive way where I'm giving them attention, but I'm giving them attention for the right thing, not the wrong thing. Does that make sense? Okay. So anyway, behavior is communication. So how do we respond? First of all, like in the example I just gave, it's important to stay calm, okay? So say somebody does something, it's totally out of line, and as soon as you say, "What are you doing?" Guess what? If the root of the behavior was attention-seeking, you just fed it. You just gave it to them. So, some of the best I want you to think about the best teachers you've ever had. Okay, when people acted out, did something wrong, how did they respond? With humor? Okay. When I think about, and maybe it's not the same for you, when I think about the best teachers I ever had, they were the ones that in conflict were calm, cool, and collected. And my worst teachers, I don't even remember what they taught me, but they were the ones that got into the power struggle, right? Every time, the high school teacher that got in that mouth fight with a kid. It's like, what are you doing? Even as a high schooler, I knew this guy, he's immature. What's wrong with him? You can see it. We can just lose respect, And at the same time, he's feeding this disrespect in these kids that were mouthing off to him because he mouthed right back. So the importance is to stay calm. Okay. So in that process, avoid power struggles. So let me give you an example of this kiddo. Again, Johnny. With his ODD, he loved the power struggle. Again, he wanted control and he wanted attention. He wanted you to be attention to him, and then he wanted to fight for that control. So the first time I actually met this kid, it was before my first year of teaching, and talk about baptism by fire. You meet with each student and their parent or caregiver. So it was actually his caregiver, his grandma, and she loved the power struggle. She got into it every time. So she said, "You like doing that, right?" It was just some simple question. We were talking about activities we do. And she said, "You like doing that, right?" And he said, "No." And you know what she did? Power struggle. She got right into it. It escalated to the point where this kid was screaming bloody murder on the floor, banging his head on the floor as hard as he could. This is how his behaviors escalated. Now, that doesn't look the same for every kid. There's certainly kids with developmental disabilities. It can look all sorts of different ways. So, the godsend in my classroom was his one-on-one aide, who had already worked with him that summer. And so the first day of school, I'm like, I'm scared for my life. Get him out of my classroom. I'm not even going to talk to him. So it's like one of the first directives I ever gave to the students. Right away. No, I'm not doing it. And before I could even respond, his one-on-one, who knew him, simply said, "I'm really sorry to hear that." And she turned away, and she worked with another kid. 2 seconds later, "Okay, I'll do it." That's all it took. And you know what? How easy is that? But again, our response is, well, okay, he's taking, I want him to do that, but he wants the control. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the control in your hands right now, buddy. This is what you're working for. And if you don't want to earn it, that's okay. I can't make you do it, okay? And this is one of the principles of CPI, actually. If you haven't learned this already, you can't control another person's behavior. But you know what you can control? Your behavior. And so you controlling your behavior and responding to them will help their behavior. But at the end of the day, you can't control their behavior. So anyway, avoid the power struggle. And now, this is where, okay, what's the line here? So say we're going to do an activity, and this kid says, no, I'm not going to do it. Here's our bottom line goals for Reflectors Ministry, right? Is we want to make sure that every individual knows that they are loved by us and by Jesus, and that this is a safe environment. That means that if my trying to make this kid do something is going to make him escalate to a point where this is no longer a safe environment, where he or she doesn't feel like they are loved anymore, I'm not going to do it. Okay? And that's still kind of maybe a fuzzy line in your mind, but I want you to think about practical, specific examples, okay? Think about what the line is. At the end of the day, success, some teachers, again, these are probably the teachers that you maybe didn't have good experience, success in their mind is that every kiddo does exactly what I tell them to do. And that they complete every assignment or piece of work that I give to them. Right? So therefore, if that's what's driving you, that's what's going to create this environment of like, you're failing because you're not doing what I asked you to do. But if we have this greater vision that we want this to be a safe environment, we want them to know that they're loved, that's going to change. Does that make sense? A little bit? Okay. So when you're dealing with specific examples of a kiddo acting out or not doing what you're asking them to do, avoid the power struggle. And if it's a really important thing for them to do, then we can make accommodations or modifications. But we'll talk about that a little bit more. Ask parents how to respond to negative behaviors. We have it even in we have it sometimes where it's like, this kid's doing something, and we even have it between volunteers sometimes, where this volunteer will walk in, this volunteer is responding to this behavior, and this volunteer is saying, what are you doing? No, we don't do that. I did it this way. Oh, okay. So communication is key, but we want to start with parents and caregivers, okay? So we want to start there. The last thing we want to do is respond to a behavior that's going to reinforce the behavior, even if we don't know what's reinforcing the behavior, or doing something that the parents have been working so hard not to do in the first place. So maybe it's, for example, like, okay, if we do these things, you're going to get, a chew toy or something like that. Which, yeah, for kids who have that oral sensory need, a chew toy might be actually something they really need. And then we find out that, the parents have been trying to wean this kid off the chew toy for years. So does that make sense? Work with the parents because, again, they know best most of the time. But we're assuming that, even if it's not the case. And then we go from there, if it's not the case. Yeah, because at the end of the day, consistency. Consistency is the goal. We want to be consistent. Do not reinforce. Power struggles is examples of when somebody's acting out and we respond, just don't reinforce the behavior. Power struggle is an example, but again, there are other things that can be rewarding, like a timeout. Okay, I don't know if any of you, like a timeout was actually rewarding, and your parents didn't know it, right? Right? So they think that they're actually giving you a consequence. It was like, I get to go to my room, and I have a TV in my room. No. But think about what even the consequences or whatever you're doing. Think about, what we don't want to reinforce this negative behavior. That's. And find the root. Ask the question, why is this kiddo acting this way? And this is where it gets very broad and very wide. Some of you maybe have the example where it's like somebody's having a really bad day. You're just like, what the heck is going on with this kid? I've never seen these behaviors before. And then when their parent picks them up, they say, oh yeah, our dog died yesterday. Oh, okay. Like, these are helpful things to know. So know the things that they're coming in with. Becky Hayes, you just told me a straight up example of that like 2 weeks ago. Something's off today. Oh, she just bought a puppy. Like, this, this is getting her excited. There's a lot going on, okay? So knowing those things, but also thinking about your environment. How come every time I turn the TV on, so-and-so has a meltdown? Maybe it's the TV, right? Think about your environment. Think about some of those things that can change. Find the root of the behavior, and then redirect it. So, Greg, so specifically, when Jacob throws a call, what am I going to do? And so here's a question for you to think about. Should I just ignore it?
That's like I said. I mean, if it's a potential where somebody could get hurt or somebody could get destroyed, then we're going to have to intervene. But
yeah.
I see where you're coming from. If he's just messing around, you just ignore it and stuff like that. It depends on the situation, but it's the only thing I can.
It does. It depends, and it depends too what the history has been if you've already addressed this issue. So here's the best thing you can do is make it clear that no, that's not okay. Okay? It is okay to say that's not okay. All right? But then redirect. Again, don't assume that they know what they should be doing instead. Because if, we have our good friend Chase. When somebody steals something from him, you know what his default is? He goes right in for the kill. Now, if all we say is, we don't hit our friends, right? We don't hit our friends. Okay, what's going to happen the next time somebody steals something from him? You might kick him instead. But again, we're assuming like he should know what else to do. We can affirm his feelings, right? And give him a better way to respond. And you know what? This is where, if I can be bluntly honest with you, as I go through counseling with my anxiety and depression, one of the things I've learned is, growing up, I wasn't allowed to actually really voice, like, I'm laying on the chair right now. But I'm just being really honest with you, and I only share this because maybe you have the same experience. I was never, my feelings weren't ever affirmed. As soon as I spoke out when my dad said something, as soon as I spoke out, you're being defensive, stop it, right? And what I learned to do was just internalize that crap, and then it was like, is what I'm feeling right now legit or valid? I guess not, probably not, Anyway, when somebody steals something from Chase, what is he feeling? Upset. That was his thing, man, he was owning it. And if all we do is say no, just stop, and that's not okay, pretty soon he's going to think oh, well, I guess people can just steal from me. I don't know. But we want to say, first of all, I understand. I understand that you are upset right now. Because I'd be upset too if somebody stole something from me. But hitting is not a good choice. Let's think of a better choice. And so the way to do that when you're redirecting is ask them first. What do you think would be a good way to respond to this? Okay, so next time somebody steals something from you, let's talk that through. And so empower them to think of ideas, but then if they're having a hard time thinking of ideas because all they know is hitting, right? Give them some ideas. Let's try this instead. Or this can be really practical when it's like, hey, what's going on, moron? You know what? Let's use nice words. Let's say, what's going on, friend? Or just say, what's going on, right? We don't have to say moron. But if I say stop saying that, what's wrong with you? First of all, I'm not giving them a replacement behavior. So let's give them something that they can have and do instead. And then practice it, model it. That's what redirect means. And then be hands off, please. So that came out wrong. Hands off as much as possible. When someone is at danger to themselves or others or property, this is a safety thing for all of us. And this is part of the policies for all of our ministries. Be hands off. Okay. Some of you might have an experience of actually going in and physically grabbing or picking up or whatever. And I know that sometimes it's because I modeled this poorly even at MOPS in Highland. This kid, I just had to physically pick him up and remove him, right? Yeah.
One time it was at the 9 o'clock service. we got everybody out of the garage safely, and they're all ready to meet, except one kid runs up the stairs yelling, "My mommy's in there, my mommy.
Yeah.
Yes, so we had to go down and chase the kid down the stairs.
Yeah. Yeah. Just, always be cognizant of what you're doing with your hands. And even with CPI, so here's our policy. If someone is at danger to themselves or others, and there has to be hands-on intervention, we have a training for that. And there's a certification for that. It's called CPI. That's part of what CPI is. The whole heart of CPI is that you never have to get to that point. That you can de-escalate the situation before you get there. That's the heart. But even their motto, and this is where CPI has been skewed by some people, it's like people who have CPI are always going in with their hands. CPI model is last resort. As little as possible do we want to be touching anyone, okay? Mostly for safety reasons. But also, sometimes touching or grabbing can be a reinforcer, right? Sometimes somebody's acting out because they know that you're going to grab their arm. And you know what they love when you grab their arm? Right? It can be a reinforcer. So just think about that. And here's a good one, and I know it requires more movement. And I hope most of you come to ministry with your tennis shoes on. That's all I'm saying. The better thing to do, can you stand up for a second? So pretend I'm working one-on-one. What's your name? Kathy. Pretend I'm working one-on-one with Kathy. And I know Kathy's a runner, right? And I know Kathy likes to be all over the place. This is a much better place to be with Kathy than this, right? Does that make sense? Especially if there's an open door over there. So I'm just cognizant of environment, right? I'm just cognizant of environment, and as long as you're in the space, you're probably fine. Thank you, Kevin. So even just think about your placement and blocking. Okay, blocking is a lot better. It's kind of defense. Let's do some basketball practice. But blocking is better than being behind and chasing and grabbing. Okay. So anyway, I can't encourage you enough to be as hands-off as possible. And then CPI principles. So let me make sure I'm not missing. Okay, we're going to talk about CPI in a minute, but let's first talk about a couple more tools to put in the tool belt. We already talked about the positive stuff. Those are good initial things to do and to kind of create a culture with. But here are some more helpful tools. Structure and consistency. This is the whole ball of wax. There's a routine and it's easy to follow. That's what structure is and consistency. Imagine you go to a new environment and you're supposed to be participating in something, but you don't know what time it starts, you don't know what time it ends, you don't know what's expected of you, you don't know who these other people are. How are you feeling? Anxious. It's funny you use that word. That's the first word in CPI's model. Anxiety is step one. It's negative behaviors. So you're feeling anxious, but imagine you go to that place and you get introduced to a couple people. There's a very rigid outline. You know exactly what you're supposed to say. You know exactly what's expected of you. How are you feeling now? A little bit better, I hope, right? This is what we can do to set up success, right? If we just have this space and it's like, imagine, like, this is really good to think about. And I know it's, for a worship service, it's a little bit different, but when we set up our environments, always thinking through, what is this going to be like for a new person? Thinking through that question and trying to walk through the experience in the eyes of a person who's never done it before or been there before. It's a really good perspective to have. So anyway, when I went down to Faith Kids, when was that? It was like a Saturday night with Kay. And cleanup song comes on, what do the kids do? They clean up. Amazing, amazing. But you know what? That's just part of the routine. And they know that's part of our structure. That when that cleanup song hits, I clean up, right? It's just what we do. Now imagine you didn't have that cleanup song and you were just, relying on, all right, let's clean up. So there are little things to do in the structure and consistency that, you know what, that is what's going to help create on-task behavior and engagement, is the more structure and consistency you can have. So this is why, again, part of the reason that we use a visual schedule. We know where we are. You know what your expectations are. And even as we go through each activity, I might give you specific things that you're supposed to do right now. And you know that you're going home. These things help. So all I would say is that if you are having a hard time with some kiddos in your environment, I want you to consider just the structure of your environment, okay? Do you have a visual schedule? Do the kids know exactly what's expected of them? Do you have routines that are consistent? And even if you have different people coming in and out, like different volunteers, and that really makes consistency tricky, you at least have the structure and systems in place to keep that consistent. Okay? One of the biggest feeders of bad behavior is downtime or unstructured time. And I've seen that over and over again, where it's like, we're going to do this for a half hour, but everyone's working on their own pace, and you just finished 15 minutes early. If I don't give you something to do in those 15 minutes, if that 15 minutes is not structured, oh man, it won't be long before you're off and running something else, you know, that's off task, and it's going to be harder to bring it all together. So anyway, structure and consistency, that's the whole ball of wax. Oh, and that's where, say like, I mean, this could be maybe pretty basic, right? You know, and most of you are pretty okay with this, but you have somebody who really, really needs that structure and consistency. Again, somebody who's a really concrete thinker. This is one example, excuse me, of something individualized that you could give. So I know that when I come to Faith Kids, I'm starting with table work. And then when I'm done with table work, move it over, I'm all done, and what's next? Part of this, just that process of a kiddo moving this themselves, that gives them ownership of their schedule a little bit. It's like, okay, this is my schedule, and I want to run down with it here. So anyway, individual schedules, they're easy to make, and you can get as specific as you want. Again, something else that creates structure within structure, a timer. There's a huge difference between saying, all right, you've earned your week, and then saying, you've earned a week for 5 minutes. Right? You're putting a structure on it. And I know that's subtle, but it makes a big difference. Just like a couple weekends ago, our friend Lily, she was really looking forward to earning the iPad, okay? But she wasn't going to get the iPad until we did the movie first, the video lesson first. But the whole time, she didn't know when the video lesson would be over. Because, again, she doesn't have that concept of time like we do. I can estimate 2 minutes. A kid with autism, we say 2 minutes, it could be 2 years, I don't know. They just don't have that same learning. So instead of just saying, you could say when movie's over, then iPad, if you're meeting expectations. But another thing to do is just say, all right, you keep following directions for 2 minutes, you get iPad. And then all of a sudden she just sat there and she was like, But she was in the zone. Instead of like always turning around or being like, where's the iPad? When do I get, it creates structure within structure. That's all I'll say about that. Oops, I'm moving too fast. Forecast. So part of forecasting, you guys know what a forecast is, right? You look at your phone on the Weather Channel app. Okay, what's it going to be like tomorrow? We can help the same thing, like it's going to be rainy tomorrow, so prepare accordingly, right? If there's a change in the day, say with Faith Kids, and you guys are coming up to worship instead of your regular routine, and I know you guys already do this, but this is why you do it, right? You're helping the kids get ready. The week before you say, now next week is going to be a little bit different, okay? Instead of all of a sudden they show up, hey, let's go upstairs. You're going to have kids freaking out, One of the things we can do to help is simply forecast and shadow. And especially helps when you know there's going to be a change in the schedule. Okay, let's talk about this. Let's get you ready for it. And say it is like free time, and then next we're moving to snack. Okay, so we're doing free time right now and snack. I'm not really, you're not waiting for me to just shut my mouth and move to the next slide. It's more of an open time. But Forecasting is as simple as saying, in 5 minutes, we're going to be moving a snack. And then 2 minutes later. In 3 minutes, we're moving a snack. Just helping them with that transition. Okay. Avoid too much downtime. I jumped ahead of myself. Okay, so I already talked about that. And here's a great example. We have there's a gymnastics class at the Alsip rec department, which is where I live. It's right down the street from our apartment. And so they have a gymnastics class that my son Jacob goes to. It's for 3-year-olds, 3 and 4-year-olds. And so parents get to sit in on the first class. So I took them, and you know what she had them doing? Okay, so they do each activity and say there's the balance beam. One kid is going on the balance beam. You know what the other 7 are doing? Sitting and watching. You know what happened? Every parent wanted to jump in. Every parent wanted to jump in and say like, and that's what happened is, it worked at first because it was a new thing, and everyone was like, oh, I wonder if Jacob will fall off the balance beam. You know? But then by the time the 3rd kid's going, it's like, this is old hat. I'm going to go jump over on these swings over here, you know? And then you have parents shouting from the sidelines, go sit down, you know, get down. But it's like, downtime, oh my gosh. You know, let's think that through. Let's think that through. How can we get full participation as much as possible? Which, sidebar for worship leaders, this is a good reason not to do too many specials, to actually have people sing. Anyway, okay, sorry. Communication, make sure everyone has a means of communicating. Okay, I need another volunteer. Jennifer, come on up here. Hold on. Yes. Okay, so right now the expectation is that you should really be sitting down. Okay? So can you go sit down? Excuse me? I told you to sit down. All right, do I need to take something away from you? Okay. Jennifer, what are you trying to communicate? Oh! I wish I would have known that. Okay, this is especially true for people that don't have verbal communication. Maybe this kiddo is acting out because they're trying to tell you something, but they can't tell you it. And maybe you're not listening or you're not getting it because the only thing in your mind is that they should be paying attention right now. They should be behaving right now. Thank you, Jennifer. If she had verbal language, she could just say, "Can I use the restroom, please?" You know? But I told her, I said, "You can't use words." So then she did the dance for us. But if I didn't know that she had to use the restroom, again, my expectation is you're supposed to be sitting down right now. So you're misbehaving. And and I have heard stories, you guys. I especially hear stories, and this is a side tangent, but my sister runs a Center for Kids with Disabilities in Nicaragua. And there's another Center for Kids with Disabilities that just, you hear all these stories. And it's just, there's not the understanding or the education, but stories where it's like kids are going to the bathroom in their pants all the time. Just because they're not finding ways for them to communicate their needs. And it just breaks my heart. But not only are they not being able to communicate, they're probably being punished for that. And that makes it even worse. So anyway, make sure, we talked about this a little bit, you can affirm feelings by allowing them to say something. You're not going to get in a power struggle, but if you at least allow room for communication, that's huge for any individual. Yeah, we already talked about expectations. One of the things, again, one of the ways you can make, besides having your expectations like really in a very visible spot, the other thing you can do is make social stories. So for some individuals, again, this is a new environment, and you can put these expectations, but I really need we had, our friend Cody, for example, the first time he came to church, it was like he walked into the worship center. I was talking to Tori about this. He walked into the worship center, and he's never been in this massive, loud, bright room before, and he's totally overwhelmed by it. So, more than just saying, okay, be a good listener, be kind, I'm going to get really specific with Cody, because he has autism and he's a very concrete learner. So I'm going to make a social story, and the social story is really easy. I should have brought an example. I just used Microsoft Word, and I put a picture here and a sentence here. So for Cody's social story, on the front it would say, going to worship. And then it would show a picture of the front doors. I walk into church. And then it would show a picture of the hallway. I get my name tag. And it would show a picture of the room where all of our folks, our teens and adults gather. I sit down with my friends, and it shows a picture. Does that make sense? It goes step by step for him. He really needs that. This is a new thing for him, and he has no idea what's expected of him. So that's a really simple example of a social story, but you can get even more general than that. But if somebody honestly doesn't know what's expected of them or what it should look like, because it's so new and so overwhelming, walk them through step by step. And using visuals is really helpful. Giving choices. Okay. Again, this is just something else to put in the tool belt that might help. One of the things you can do, I'm sure you've done this all as parents. We do this with Jacob now all the time. It works unbelievably. We are going out into the store right now, and he needs to get his shoes on. Okay. So, Kate says, let's get your shoes on. No, we play cards. And then she asks, do you want mommy to put your shoes on or daddy to put your shoes on? Daddy. Okay, now, we empowered him. We gave the control to him, but within that framework of still getting him to do what he's supposed to do. Does that make sense? Giving choices empowers an individual. Again, at the end of the day, a lot of us, we want control. And so we can still encourage people to do what we want them to do or what they need to do, but in a choice way that gives them some of that decision, right? Okay. And then first then is another example of creating that structure. Sometimes we don't know, for Lily, for example, for the iPad, maybe the timer was a helpful way, but simply saying, first this, then this. First movie, then iPad. It just helps. If we just say like, hey, if you do really well, you're going to get some time on the iPad. And if we don't follow that up with any sort of structure, it's like, am I even doing well? When am I getting the iPad? Where we say, okay, I know you really want to work on the iPad. So first we're going to do this, and then we can work on the iPad. But first this, with these expectations. First then language. Really, really simple, but really helpful for creating more of that structure. Okay. So let me hit these in 2 minutes. All right, the CPI basics. Crisis development model. Okay.
What does CPI stand for?
Crisis Prevention Institute. That's what CPI stands for. So if you come to one of our CPI trainings, it's not mandatory for anyone, but it's optional. We provide food. But it's a long training, but it's a certification program, and the more people we can have, training it, the better. But here's kind of the basic model is, here's what you'll see in a lot of situations of escalating behaviors. It starts with anxiety. That's why structure is so important. When you walk into a place and there's no structure, you automatically have anxiety. Imagine a waiting room at a hospital. You see somebody doing this. What are they projecting? What are they communicating right now? Nervous, anxiety. What are some other things that you see? Anxiety. Say with kids in your situation, what are some things that you know that they're starting to get anxious? What do they do? Fidgeting. Crying. Okay. Tone of voice changes. Mannerisms change. What's that?
Isolating themselves.
Isolating themselves. Okay. Dragging their heels. Yeah. So one of the things that or the way that we should respond when we see somebody in that anxious phase is just be supportive. Do you need something? Can I help you with anything? If you can address what they're worried about or what they're feeling anxious about right away, you can hopefully de-escalate the situation back to normal. But if we don't help, or if we jump ahead of ourselves, I'm going to talk about that in a second, they might get into this defensive stage where it's like they're showing anxiety, maybe they're tapping their pencil. Stop that! Don't do that. Okay, we're being directive instead of supportive. That might jump them to that defensive mode. No, I'm not going to do it. So the defensive mode could be, resistance, and they're starting to lose. I've used so many words this morning. Now I'm losing my words. They're starting to lose control, right? They're starting to get a little bit out of control. To the point where if we don't help them, if we don't give them choices to help them de-escalate, they might escalate into just acting out. And acting out can be verbal, but it can be physical as well, where they're screaming, yelling, throwing a tantrum. A tantrum is an example of acting out. And our response, so the non-violent physical crisis intervention is what that stands for. In the CPI training, that's what a lot of the hands-on stuff is. There's probably like 2 or 3 hours worth of the training that teach you the hands-on. I want to quick show you just a couple of these things. I need someone who's not afraid to hit me up here. Dave Barzicki, come on. I'm calling down. Because I can't, again, not all of you are going to come to CPI training, but this is really important stuff. If somebody hits you, go ahead and just throw a punch. Okay, I'm just going to block and move. Block and move. Okay, same with a kick. Okay, block and move. All right. So it could be a punch, and I'm just gonna block and move. Again, I'm not trying to go ahead. What are you doing? Yeah, I'm not gonna try to do that. Okay, as hands off.
Pull the jersey over his head and just start.
That's right. Okay. I'm not gonna be. I want to be as hands off as possible, right? So for a hit of any kind, block and move. Now for a grab. This is why I want to tell you this, because this is really counterintuitive. Go ahead and grab my hair if you can. By the way, the behavior therapist at Elam always, whenever I came in with a bust hair, he's like, ah. That's the best way to make sure your hair does not get pulled. But go ahead, you can just make a fist up there. Okay, now, do you know what my instinct is? Pull away. What's going to happen if I pull away? Yeah, he's going to come away with hair and possibly some scalp. And I don't want that. So, here's what you do with the hair pull. Go ahead. Okay. Lock it in. Lock it in, okay? Because if I have his hand here, he can't pull away right now. Okay, so that's step number one. Then second is use leverage. So if I hair pull, I'm just going to push in. Dave, what's happening to your fingers right now? Ow. See? Now you can practice that. We don't really have time to practice it now. Practice it at home, because really the sensation in your hand when your wrist gets pulled back, your fingers let go. Okay. So same thing with a bite. I don't know. Okay. I'm not going to do it. Okay. Use your hands. This is what we do in the studio. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. All right. So again. My instinct is probably what in a bite situation? Pull. What's going to happen? Yeah. Oh yeah. So what I'm going to do is push in and down mounts. Okay. And it's the same. You know, your jaw. That's the. Always think about the weak point and think about the opening point. Okay. Yeah. So, and a bite and a hair pull. Don't pull away right away. Feed it. Feed it, and then use leverage to get out. Does that make sense? Okay. And then same with like even if somebody just grabs your hand, actually step in, right? So step in, and then his hands will loosen, and then you just kind of twist him. Every time, move away, okay? If he bites me, and I get out of it, I'm not gonna stay right here. He's gonna bite me. So with a hit, block and move. With a grab of any kind, feed it down and away, and move away. Make sense? Okay. Thank you, Dave. Okay. The other really cool thing that I'm so glad is part of this model, though, is attention reduction. Have you ever seen at the end of a tantrum what happens? What happens?
Shut down.
Shut down. You're tired. I've seen kids cry. That's part of the process. And we can't just, as soon as they're done, we can't jump to one of these, we can't jump back to our directive. We have to, therapeutic report. It's establishing that report, saying what happened, what do we need to change, and how are you doing, do you need anything? Instead of saying like, are you done? Because you're supposed to be doing this right now. So here's the cool thing, and it's called an integrated experience. That's what CPI calls an integrated experience. We can't control their behavior. We can only control our behavior. And if our behavior is meeting the wrong, again, if somebody's feeling anxious and we start moving to directive, you know what we're doing? We're moving them down to defensive. Does that make sense? Okay? And if all we're doing is hands-on, they're going to keep acting out. So anyway, our goal is to de-escalate. And then this is really some of my, I wish we had time for this, because this is actually probably the most fun to practice. Do you guys care if we take an extra 2 minutes to do this? Okay, just two volunteers. Let's get Amy and Jamie, because they volunteered themselves on Wednesday. Give it up for Amy and Jamie. Okay, so Jamie, you stand right there, and then Amy, you come over here. All right, so Jamie, I want you to pretend Amy is a kiddo in Faith Kids.
Okay.
And I want you to tell her any directive. So it could be, we're going to draw a picture right now. Just give her a directive, okay?
Okay, it's time to go to small group. Why? Because large group is over, so now we're gonna go with our small group leader. But why do we have to do that? Because that's after large group, and we're gonna have lots of fun, and I have to show you some fun stuff to do. No. Not doing that.
Don't look at me. That's good.
Okay, well.
So wait. So Amy just modeled the first two steps of the verbal escalation continuum. So a lot of times it might start with questioning. So when you get into a verbal fight, it might start with questioning. And questions can be one of two things. Either starting with a power struggle, or they could be genuine information seeking. And if it's information seeking, what should we do? Give a valid answer, right? Give a valid answer to a valid question. But if it's seeking power or control, then we redirect. We redirect to the activity. We're doing this right now. Okay? And some of Baby's questions might have been legit. Like if she asked why the first time, well, give a valid answer. But if she says, but why? Read into it. But a lot of times, if that doesn't suffice, they might move into that refusal stage. Or, quite honestly, we've all seen it where they just go right to refusal. No questions asked. I'm not doing it. Okay, now, Jamie. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. So this time, Amy, you are the Faith Kids leader, and Jamie is the kiddo. So go ahead and give Jamie a directive.
We are going to head out and go to worship.
No,
Is there a reason you don't want to worship with us today?
I'm not going.
Is there something bothering you today?
I'm not going, and I'm gonna punch you in the face if you
All right. We have that on video. Dude, she's gonna kill her dog. Okay. So sometimes this is what the escalation can look like. You've probably all seen it where it's more than just no. It's like no. You know that's what the tantrum is. And if you have children, you've experienced it at the grocery store. No. You know. But this is where like if they really want to get under your skin, and this is why staying calm and Q-tip. Write down the acronym Q-tip. Quit taking it personally. Okay. Because some kids know exactly what's going to press your button. And they might say, I'm going to kill your dog. Yeah. I'm going to hit you. I'm going to punch you. In my student teaching, I had a kid, I'm going to cut you. Dude. I mean, seriously, where's this kid learning this? You know? But he knew that was going to elicit my emotion to reinforce that behavior. But the same thing usually, because even if the kiddo's not acting out and hitting or is endangering himself to others, this is another way that behaviors can escalate. But the same thing is true after it's all done. There's that tension reduction. That's an important spot. But anyway, thank you so much, ladies. Excellent job. All that to say, if you have any desire to be certified in CPI, you're welcome to come to our next training. It's a long day. It's a long day, and we can't. It's totally optional. But there's a lot of principles there that help in the home, that help in the workplace. I promise you, it would be worth your time if you have time and if you have the margin to do that. But anyway, we'll have a registration link up online. Otherwise, you can just email me if you want to. If you want to come to that, or if you want to learn more about it. But there's a lot more there. So I know we're over time, and it's almost 11:11, so make a wish. Questions or things that you feel like I totally botched, or we totally missed, or anything?
We used to try and raise public.
Good word. So Trudy's full of good phrases to keep on. Praise in public, punish in private. It's a good word. Good word. I would say praise in both. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah. It's a good rule of thumb. I like it.
Any quick advice? We are very rarely in the situation because the directors make sure that we are well staffed in big kids. But on occasion, we would have a child who has some behavioral issues in the midst of children that are more balanced. And we normally will have an extra volunteer to be able to be one-on-one, but on occasion we are in a situation where as a small group leader, we have all of them with the one that needs that little bit more attention. Is there something?
It's a great question. So if you are literally, this kiddo probably needs individual attention, and say you have 2 adults in the room and there's 20 kids. What do you do? That's a great question. First of all, all the proactive side of that, and I know, now I'm stepping into the Faith Kids role because this is nothing new. Is part of the proactive thing is to make sure you have as many volunteers as you possibly can, and people that have the capability to float around. But if you're in that situation, I would say If you can think on your feet for an activity that the kids can do independently, all right? So we're doing a large group time. I'm leading it. But this one kiddo is just having a hard time. They're not coming in. The one volunteer is already helping over here. Here's what I might try to do. I might try to quick wrap up what we're doing right now. And let's transition. I know it's not on the schedule. We're going to transition into 5 minutes of free time just because I love you guys. All right? So 5 minutes. I'm going to start the timer right now. Get those kids doing something independently and away from this other kid. And then take that 5 minutes to deal with the kid. And what you might want to do is, again, if you're in a situation too where it's only 2 people and you can't have one person leave the room, I would hope you have radios or some means of communication to get somebody else in the room. I would ask for help, honestly, from somebody else, if that's possible. So again, hopefully you're never undermanned enough that would become the case. But so that takes some proactive. I know that takes a lot of recruiting, and I know, Faith Kids, you guys always, volunteer needs is always a need.
But even that little bit, Vinny needs a lot to give me permission to go off, because, we come in with an expectation and kind of structure already. And if we're hit with a situation where we're expecting, we're still trying to stay within that structure. So just having the permission to kind of walk off the beaten is a big deal. So.
Good. You probably already knew that. You were just making me
No,
think
I
about it.
when you're in the situation, it's like, oh, Captain Obvious isn't there for you.
Sure, I know what you mean. It's easy to think, this is my agenda, we have to do this right now, and we're going to get it done. Yeah, feel free to set it aside for a little bit. That's good. Okay?
I'm thinking back to last summer, and we really did kind of flow with it, but we should have had a plan in place for what we were going to do, so at least it's consistent with what we do next in getting with a specific child. Because when we knew what his behavior was going to be, more than likely, but it ended up, at least for me, it was like, okay, we'll stay with this guy, carry on, and it wasn't really the best selection.
Sure.
We didn't hear what she said.
I'm sorry. To have a plan in place. To have a plan in place. We had, last summer, it's, more fluid, and we had an expectation that this child would be here, and we dealt with it on a weekly basis, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But I think if we had something that we were going to do, and we did have an alternative, but it wasn't what the parent wanted.
Yeah. One of the proactive things you can do real quick is we have forms, first of all, for parents to fill out with the Reflectors Ministry. Anybody can use those forms, and it asks a lot of the basic questions: what are their strengths, limitations, communication styles, preferred activities. Those are things that really help get to know an individual. So if that's appropriate, send them that link where we can print out the paperwork and they can fill it out. But don't make them fill it out on their first time. For their first time, if they're willing to share, and most will, but some will just, here you go, and then you just gotta, you gotta think on the fly a little bit and be able to pull somebody else in. But a lot of times parents will say, hey, just so you know, so-and-so has autism, here are some things. But don't let them leave. If they're opening about that and you can have that conversation in time, I would say, give me a top 3. Give me 3 things that I need to know to help David have a good day today. Let's start there, just for that first visit. And then from there, they can hopefully fill out some more specific things or answer some more specific questions.
So I'd like to hear how you would handle this situation. So you're at the table with your kids, and one of the kids just gets up and starts going to do something else all the time. He does not want to participate. How do I handle this situation?
Yeah. Again, one of the things is I would ask some questions. What's his motivator for sitting there, other than this is what we're supposed to be doing right now? So think through that. Think through ways to reinforce his sitting and participating. But honestly, I would ask for help. Honestly, I would ask for somebody that can be with him. If this is a consistent thing, it's often, and again, what's he communicating by running? quite possibly it could be that he doesn't have the attention span, for this. And either I need to adjust, like I'm going to sit next to him, and I'm going to have something extra for him to be doing right now, maybe a sensory box of things that can keep his hands busy, or something else. The other thing I would maybe do is, like, when he comes, maybe he gets to start the day with 5 minutes on the trampoline. He can get some of that energy out. But again, if our expectation is that 10, 7-year-olds are going to sit for a half hour. I mean, I know it's not that long, but is that realistic? Let's think through realistic expectations. And what are the things that we can do? Let's all take a movement break together every 3 minutes. Okay, we're doing our small group time. Timer goes off in 3 minutes. Quick, stand up, do some jumping jacks. Okay, let's sit back down. So I guess those are kind of off-the-cuff answers. I don't know, none of them are probably, I don't know if they're helpful at all, but like I say, it's never easy and it's never one size fits all. But it's trying to get to the root of the behavior and then trying to set up as much as you can on the front end so that those maybe would be minimal. Okay. Y'all are troopers. Thank you so much for sticking around, for coming, first of all, and then for sticking around so long. I really appreciate it. I certainly do not have all the answers. That is the farthest thing from true. I always learning, always figuring a lot out, and I'm not the expert. But certainly, if you guys feel stuck, you are welcome to email me or call me or stop by and talk to me or just don't follow me around.
Guys, give Vinny a round of applause. Sharing what you do know with us, Vinny. Really appreciate it.
Let me say a quick word of prayer, and then send you guys off. If there are extra donuts, take one for the road. Coffee as well. God, thank you for loving us. Lord, despite all the times that we misbehave, despite all the times we disobey you, God, you have laid out the expectations for us really simply. Love you and love others. And God, we confess that we fail all the time. And we thank you that you still love us unconditionally. And God, our desire is that we would get better at it. Lord, not to earn anything, but simply to just be more in tune with you, Father, and love the way that you loved us. But God, we also ask that for every child who is under our responsibility, whether that's in Faith Kids or Kids Hope, Student Ministries, Reflectors, but God, especially our own children, if we have them. And we just ask, God, for the keys. We ask that you would continue to just show us and equip us just the approach or the things that we need to move forward with. And Lord, all for your glory and for your honor. And so, Spirit, fill us, and would you go before us, beside us, and behind us. In Jesus' name, amen.